Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Ovations Agency's second Impact. We are proud today to have, of course, our co-host, Mr. Jason Kramer, and Mr. Thornell Jones, and our special guest, Germono Toussaint. Germono Toussaint is a multi-award winning composer, arranger, playwright, and producer. He is one of the founding playwrights of the Obie Award winning the Fire This Time Festival, the founding artistic director of A Mile in My Shoes, Inc., and owner of Brown Liquor Music, LLC. Today, Thornell and Jason will discuss with Germono his new album, and I want to get this right, Brown Liquor and Blessed Oil. We will ask everybody to please mute their video and stop their video, and we will have our guests and our co-host on the screen. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, Germono?
Thank you. What's up, Thornell? What's up, Jason? Thank you.
First, before we begin, I want to know, Thornell, why are you sitting in a pose like you're getting a high school photo right now?
Oh, three-quarter? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
What's going on there?
Well, two things. It was advised because I was, you're very funny.
Okay.
It was because I was having glare in my glasses, one.
Oh, okay.
And two, because, I mean, it's probably irrelevant to anybody but me, but I did have a little bit of a situation early this summer, and I have some scars on my face that I'm not ready to reveal to the world yet. So you're getting the three-quarter view. How about that?
Show your scars, Thornell.
No, my scars are both emotional and physical, I assure you.
Okay.
But I'm really, really glad to be here, and I'm really glad to kick off this this season, if you would, of Impact with Germono Toussaint. Actually, Germono, how do you like to pronounce your last name? Because, you know, you got people who got the French pronunciation and people who got the American pronunciation.
Toussaint, like croissant.
Okay, Toussaint, like croissant. We like that. And it was interesting because Jason actually asked earlier, I said, is he from New Orleans? I was like, I don't know. Does he got Creole background?
So yeah, that was a question because just, you know, looking at some of the bio that you've done and the music you've done for productions, and then listening to some of your songs and the way you kind of structure the songs, and, you know, it makes me think of a lot of New Orleans music and style, you know, especially the older jazz albums that kind of had the same kind of style of Treme or something like that. Not the TV show, but, you know, the town. And then seeing Toussaint is your last name, it became really intriguing. And to be honest, in watching the video and you know, in seeing was it Michael Michelle Lynch play, and then I started thinking this is very, very similar to what somebody in a New Orleans background would have.
Yeah, strangely enough, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah, how exciting. Milwaukee, great. All right, yeah.
Milwaukee.
Well, that just killed it all, but yeah.
New Orleans is one of my favorite cities. And my grandfather was from Louisiana. And I started doing my family history. And I went all the way back to the slave master. And guess where he died and where my fifth great grandfather was born? New Orleans.
New Orleans, okay.
Very, very interesting. But I was named after my uncle, Navis Germono Toussaint Monk.
Interesting. Monk is his last name.
Monk is his last name.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a relation to?
No, it's just, I think it's just coincidence. Like the Toussaint, the monk is just all.
Yeah.
All coincidence. At least I haven't found a connection.
Well, you could just say it and we'll believe it. So it's all right.
Start telling people I'm related.
Yeah. It may sell tickets, whatever, but yeah.
I love it. The funny thing about names and, you know, locate, you know, where family comes from and stuff is this whole idea of journey. And especially in the African-American narrative here in the United States, we have a lot of conversation about coming from Africa, the Middle Passage, where did your family, your ancestors land here in the United States? And then it becomes, well, America, because it wasn't the United States yet. And then, you know, where, due to whatever factors, did they end up being, where they're in Maryland, where they're in South Carolina, where they in, you know, the Midwest, you know, did they, you know, are they Creole from New Orleans or from Louisiana? So I find all that stuff very intriguing. I know it's really great that you know your family names. I had my name, I use it now, is Thornell, right? Thornell Jones Jr., as a matter of fact. And my middle name is Tobias. And my name, I'm a junior, so I get Thornell from my dad, but the Tobias came from my great grandfather, who was a slave in South Carolina. And it's, well, okay, my middle name is Tobias, but my family called me Toby. And so in 1976, when Roots came out, and there was this whole scene where the slave master was trying to, you know, rename this African with the name Toby, you know, all of my friends in school were like reenacting the scene, making it a whole big thing about your name be Toby now. And I stopped using my own name until many years later. My aunt and my grandfather went down to South Carolina to the courthouse and found the records, found out that his name was Tobias and that he was a landowner. And, you know, and after, you know, I mean, you don't want to get into all of that, but it's like, once I had a sense of who this person was, who had this name that I wasn't proud of, I was then able to be proud of it because I knew. So I love the fact that you know your uncle's name and the history of your family and where you're from and all that stuff. It goes such a long way to informing yourself about who you are and the greatness that you walk in, you know, as you walk with your ancestors. So I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. He was my favorite uncle.
That's apparently you had a very colorful childhood,
to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was colorful, eventful. I guess in both iterations, or both phases, where you could say the blessed oil and the brown liquor were both eventful. Mm-hmm. The brown liquor was definitely more fun. Yeah, it was just basement party after basement party after basement party. Not a lot of supervision, a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking, a lot of music. And I got to experience it because there was a lack of supervision. You know, anyone that was like aware of where their kids were and what their kids were doing would have probably put them to bed. But I was up there singing with, you know, my aunts and them, you know, like 4 years old, 5 years old. 4-part harmony, you know, that's part of what trained my ears.
Oh, that's great. But you know, the funny thing about it is you tell the story and it's exactly my childhood, but I was supervised.
Oh.
My dad was a college student.
Oh, no.
And we had home and he would put us to bed and then we would sit at the top of the stairs while the party was going on and all the students would one by one come by and hang out with us on the stairs. So we weren't in the party, but we were there.
But you got whiffs of it.
Oh, absolutely. We got whiffs of it. And eventually we got reprimanded and sent to bed. But yeah, I'm always intrigued by, I mean, you know, you grew up around a whole bunch of music and then later on, you know, you created music stuff. We'll obviously get to that. But yeah, we were those kids who were hanging out at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning at the Waffle House after the club. Yeah, that was.
Oh yeah, that's the fun. That's so much fun. I mean, I didn't get that experience until like 17, 18.
Right.
But I was definitely in the midst of the party. And the lack of supervision led to some other things that were not good.
Okay.
Yeah, it just sort of like stuck with me because I think those early years sort of solidify for you what your aesthetic is going to be and
Right.
what you choose to do.
Right.
And for me, all I heard was Motown and Stax and Soul Children of Chicago and Aretha. And like, I didn't know, like that was, what was that? Like early 80s. And like there was other music being, out, and like hip hop was growing. I didn't know anything about that until Motown 25. And I realized like all of these people are not, doo-wop artists. They're like semi-retired, some of them. I didn't know Diana Ross wasn't with the Supremes. I didn't know Michael, it's just a weird realization. And that sort of started to open me up to other genres. But by then, everyone started getting saved. And that was the end of that.
And you said that was the end of it, but it didn't happen like overnight. How did you perceive the shift? What was the catalyst, and then how did the kind of shift happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I remember it, my uncle got, and I don't know if everyone knows what saved means.
Well,
I should probably
explain for the people who don't know.
I guess the charismatic Christian church, Pentecostalism and other movements, denominations. When you give your life over to Christ, you profess Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you renounce yourself of a life of sin, that is getting saved. And for some denominations, it's saved with the evidence of speaking in tongues. So you also have to speak in tongues as evidence of your being saved. It's a lot. So my uncle was the first in the family to get saved, and he's now a bishop. And he went throughout the family, like saving everyone, and my mom was the most stubborn, and she was the last to convert. I have a weird story. I don't know if I should tell it. It's a little super natural in nature.
But it'll all hang out. There's no judgment here.
Okay, well, whatever. So one night, she put me in a crib, and she went about her business, and she went back into the room, and I was not in the crib. And we lived in a little. It was a duplex, I believe. It was a very small in the inner city. There was nowhere for me to go. But she looked all over, and I was not in the crib. And she said that she like fell on her knees and started praying. She's like, Lord, give me back my child, et cetera, et cetera. And then she heard me crying, and I was right back where she put me. I don't know. She's not the type to make up stories, but that's just one of the things that probably helped convince her to like go ahead and like. She went into labor in the middle of a party, by the way.
Woo! Okay,
yeah.
So you had the party in your bones.
Yeah, and my aunt and my father came to see her and me with a hangover. It was yeah, interesting stories. But yeah, so my uncle went through saving everyone. My mom was the last to get saved, and she finally converted. But from that time until probably my adulthood, she was always church hopping and trying to find, I don't know what she was trying to find, but I've been in every type of denomination. Church of God in Christ, Baptist, Assembly of God, Lutheran, Wisconsin Synod Lutheran, Missouri Synod Lutheran, everything. Wherever she went, we went. And I don't know what she was searching for, but I had the entire experience on both sides, I think.
So I have a question. The basement parties, the brown liquor parties and all that, was that anything bad for you to get saved? Was it anything, since they were unsupervised, you guys are experiencing and learning about things in life you probably wouldn't necessarily listen to or learn about if you didn't have those experiences. And do you think saving with the preconditions of you're supposed to behave a certain way and you can't be like this, you can't be like that, takes away from childhood experiences?
Well, I think that there were things I should not have experienced.
Right.
I remember going downstairs and everyone was passed out from whatever. And interestingly, because everyone was partying at the same time, I had a conversation with my cousin last year about her waking up in the middle of the night and her mom was not in the house. And she was young, you know, she's only 10 years older than me. But she wasn't in the house because she was partying with my mom. So you can imagine like the angst or trauma of waking up and your mom isn't there. And I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but it also leaves room for predators.
Yeah.
Which happened to a lot of us. Because we were unsupervised. So yes, there's the party atmosphere, which was fun, but people that are looking for an unsupervised child are aware that this is an open door for them as well.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah.
That's heavy. So,
and this is the conversations I've had with my cousins who I grew up with. Like we had so many of the same experiences that we didn't realize until like maybe 2 years ago. And they're in their 50s, I'm in my 40s.
Well, the upside of that is really great that you're actually having these conversations, because a lot of people don't ever have them. But obviously it's a dark tale, a dark story to share that, there were predators that were taking advantage of you unsupervised kids. I actually didn't even consider that was an issue or could be an issue. So I appreciate your kind of bringing that to light and making that part of the narrative, because, it's very easy to think, okay, your uncle got saved. He, convinced one by one the family members to be, Christian and go to church and live a righteous life. But in the midst of all that was a bunch of trauma. And so, it's important to acknowledge that, So when did you realize that, you were singing, as a little kid, you were singing 4-part harmony with the grown-ups. When did you realize that you had like a music gift?
So I have this thing about grandparents and their connection to their grandchildren. I feel like they sort of see their grandchildren before the parents do. Mm-hmm. And I think you know what I mean by see.
Sure.
I was banging on the table. I was probably like 3 years old. And my grandmother said to my mom, put him in piano. Have no idea how she knew from that I should be in piano. But my mom thankfully listened. So I started piano at 4. And thankfully I had a wonderful teacher, Linda Martin. I wish she could hear this. Excuse me?
That was whoop, whoop. Linda Martin.
Linda Martin, yeah. She was amazing because African-American woman who performed at all these clubs and, everything. But she played piano, she could sight read, she knew music theory, she knew voice, but she could also read, she could also play by ear. So she wanted me to learn, music theory and sight read. That's what my mom wanted as well. But my ear was very strong because I was listening to all that, whatever. And I would ask her to play the song first. I would have the music in front of me. I was like, could you play this for me? Just so I could hear what it's like. Mm-hmm. So she would play it. I don't think she knew, and she didn't think anything of it. And then I would play it right after her, looking at the sheet music. I had no idea what was on that sheet music.
I was you played the whole thing by ear.
I was
mimicking her.
It.
Yeah, well,
I did that for a long time. until she figured it out.
Did you ever learn did you ever really learn how to read and to notate and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I was with many different piano teachers throughout the years. The strictest was in college, Dr. Unjun Kwak. So I learned how to read and write music. I wrote my first song when I was in second grade.
Wow.
And I accompanied myself on the piano. And I remember the kids trying to figure out how I did it, like it was a trick. And I don't know how I did. I just remember knowing how to play. I don't remember the process of learning. I think Little Richard talks about this, something similar to this, where he's like, he just banged on the piano until the piano said, "This is enough." Like, enough of this abuse. Like, just, I'm gonna let you play me. So something to that effect. Like, I don't know. I just started playing and writing. But my grandfather played piano, who I never met, and guitar, and everyone in my family sings. So I think it's also in the blood.
Okay. So it is genetics.
Yeah, definitely. Like in my family, if you can't sing, you're probably adopted. You're probably not really related to us.
Jason, does music run in your family?
My family?
Yeah, you have an incredible ear. I'm just wondering if music runs in your family too.
Well, here's the weird part. So my name is not really my name because I'm adopted, and I actually have a different name for 2 weeks before I got adopted. But apparently, my birth parents are criminals. And one was a bag man in the music industry and did bad things, and would pick up the bag of drugs or whatever, and got popped and spent a few years in the lockup. And same with my dad. And so as far as I know, that was all the music that they did. So everything else is actually attributed to my uncle now, who when I was 8 years old gave me Bob Marley's Exodus and Magical Mystery Tour, both on record. And Bob Marley's Exodus had just come out, and that was in 1978, and so that was my real new introduction. Were those two records, from the extremes of the Beatles taking whatever drugs they did to Bob Marley obviously taking the drugs he did, and learning two different styles and vibes. And even though all these guys were like connected musically in some way, somehow, that's how I started it off. And from there, by the time I hit 20s, I started getting into jazz pretty heavy, to where I played saxophone.
Oh, okay. I didn't think I knew that.
Yeah.
So we find things about our friends just talking with other people. So Germono, this is your stage. You're telling your story. I'm obviously we get an opportunity to read your bio, and you've done this, and you've done that, you've done this, and you've done that, and so impressive. You actually left Milwaukee in 2005, but part of that was your internal journey, and it took place right there while you were going to church and making music and being the music and all that kind of stuff. Why don't you share a little bit of that era of your life, being in Milwaukee and, facing the church every Sunday?
Yeah, what started with my Lutheran, I was raised, I guess you could say I was raised Lutheran.
Okay.
Grade school, I think second grade all the way through high school. But even in that, my mom was church hopping. So in order to get, there was assistance, because it had a tuition, there was assistance given to certain low income kids. But in order to get that assistance, you had to be in church every Sunday at whatever your home church was, that Lutheran church. So my mom would go to whatever church she felt like it, and then hop into the Lutheran church to say that she was there.
Right.
So while I was being raised Lutheran, I was being raised Seventh-day Adventist and Church of Christ, all the different denominations. When I was I think I was 18 or 19, she joined a prayer meeting she joined lots of prayer meetings. But this one was from two pastors from Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
that moved back to Milwaukee to start a church. And she just invited me to this prayer meeting. They found out I could play keyboard, and all of a sudden there was a husband and wife team, and she starts saying, "Oh Lord, oh he's showing me something. He's showing. Oh I feel like he's showing me something." I'm like, really?
Amen.
Is he showing you that I'm going to play for your service? So anyway, they eventually started a church, and I played for the first service. And the church grew, and I started playing for the praise team, and I started directing the praise team. Then I started directing the choir. Then several years after that, I was ordained as the minister of music. Now, the bishop of that church and 200 other churches across the country was Carlton Pearson.
Oh.
And I don't know if a lot of people know who that is. He has a movie out about him called Come Sunday. But yeah, I heard, now the Lutheran denominations were not at all accepting of same gender loving or queer folk at all. But they didn't constantly preach against it. It was just sort of like, you just knew they weren't cool with it. When I joined this church, which was African-American, non-denominational, Pentecostal and Baptist flavor because of the pastor's background, I heard it all the time. Like, these sissies, these faggots, this is abomination. You're going, like, from guest speakers and from the pastors, more from guest speakers, if I'm being honest. And a lot of those guest speakers came from Tulsa. So when I was invited to go to the annual conference in Tulsa, which was called Azusa, I never went. Because I'm like, I don't want to hear this. Like, they're talking about me. So one of the conferences they had in Milwaukee, they brought in speakers from Tulsa, like they usually did. And this speaker, her name was Prophetess Vanessa Witherspoon, and I hope she hears this one day. She started talking about, oh, this is an abomination, and God is showing me all the homosexuals in the room. And then she stopped, and she turned around and she looked at me. I'm the only one on stage.
Right.
So everyone knows she's addressing me. And that was traumatic. Like that, like my entire spirit was broken. Whatever self-esteem I had left was gone by that time. And yeah, I sort of like was in a daze and became extremely suicidal because I thought, oh, this is my life now. And people were saying things like, women were saying things like, oh, the Lord showed me that you're going to be my husband and we're going to do this and that. And, you know, one day you're going to have a church. And I thought, this is like the worst case scenario. So it's like, I'm either going to live that life or die. And death seemed like the sweeter option at the time. So several years into that, the pastors, you know, again, they came from Azusa. They were saying how wonderful it was and I should have been there. Like, no, thank you. So they showed the congregation a tape of one of the last nights of Azusa for the people that didn't get to go. And they prefaced showing this tape by saying, now, we don't know exactly what Bishop is saying in this sermon. It's something new, but, you know, we're going to follow him. And this was Bishop Carlton's last sermon or message at the Azusa conference, where he started to introduce inclusion or universalism, basically saying, like, all of the people you demonize, gay people, queer people, they are not going to hell. There is not a place called hell to put them in. And everyone is saved. And like all hell broke loose. All hell broke loose. Like, people, I could see people on stage that were his friends, like, you know, like, what are you doing? Azusa was over after that. Everyone left. He lost everything. Just by that.
But you know, it's funny that you say that, because Jason and I, when we were talk about it, you know, Jason was raised Jewish. What did you say about what the Jewish people say? Jay?
Oh, what did I say? I forgot.
You're basically like, oh, that's what you're into? Great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have the proverbial gay uncle, and it was never. No one cared, growing up, and I'm always fascinated with religions and their personal dogma of anybody who's different than them. And I grew up on the West Coast and in basically an agnostic Jewish faith where it didn't matter who you were. I mean, a very multicultural family, and all shades, all colors, all sexes, all this, all that. And it saddens me to see that people have to go through such issues and problems because of something that just is in their lives, but then it also makes me happy that you do have people that do stand up for that, and even though they may lose everything, it's two tears in a bucket. At least they went out and did it and trying to make it different for everybody. Do you find yourself still religious, or do you go to church, or do you go to like churches that are non-denominational, or how does that work for you now, knowing that there is this side of the church?
Yeah, I almost went to church last Sunday because a friend of mine was ministering, but I ended up not going, and it was actually a Lutheran church. There is a split or sect of the Lutheran church that is very accepting. I think it's American Lutheran.
Right.
And they have like openly gay ministers and all of that. When I moved to New York, I ended up volunteering at a church called Rehoboth. And the pastor was, who is now Bishop Joseph Toussaint. And that merged with the Rivers of Living Water. I was there for a few years. I never joined, but I ended up doing the same thing. I was like directing the choir, praise team, playing, keyboard, organ. Completely different experience. I mean, these were all African-American, same-gender loving people rolling in the aisle, speaking in tongues, like running up and down, and it was like they were free, but also working through whatever trauma they experienced in the church, along with me. Very liberating experience. But after I left that, I don't think I've had maybe a few visits to other churches.
Now, I want to get into the whole music, how you transferred into that, but I'm very interested in how in culture, Black culture, the word saved is different than white Christian culture would have. You're saying speaking in tongues. How different is that than somebody from, Alabama trying to pretend they're speaking Latin and, dangling snakes?
No, it's no different.
Is it the same thing, or?
In the early Black church, a lot of the church leaders were hoodoo practitioners. You say that now and people think that's like blasphemy, but they were. There were not apostolic, but Pentecostal bishops who were also practicing hoodoo.
Right.
And that is our spiritual root.
Yeah, that is. Yes.
So there's really no difference now. It's just that it's demonized. So the swinging of incense or oil on the forehead, or being possessed by a spirit, Loa or other, or possessed by the Holy Spirit, or speaking in a heavenly language, or speaking in tongues, or speaking in the language of whatever spirit is possessing you, it's all the same. It's all the same. Right. But the charismatic Christian church has demonized our roots, which is very unfortunate, because I think it cuts us off from a lot of our power. So and a lot of our history.
So saying that, so like Black Liquor and Blessed Oil, your album that's out, it's really interesting because you've definitely taken part of your history of the church and also a lot of the omissions of stuff that you've dealt with and kind of like throwing it out on the table there and then putting it to song, kind of like modern day hip hop. I've always looked at it as hip hop as like not just a sample based thing, but more of a montage. And then, you know, what we're in the early days, it was really famous for skits, right, within. And I see that in a lot of your work where you musically, you've actually broken a little rules, because skits used to be their own tracks, but in your songs, you're putting them right in the front.
Oh yeah, I thought it was important to be as transparent as I could with my mental health journey as well. And I was a little scared to put like the suicidal stuff in there, because those were my actual therapy sessions where I'm talking about that stuff. But I don't know who's listening, and I don't know who may gather some hope from that, or just know that someone else has gone through that process. And also, I'm still healing myself. I've healed a lot of things, but I'm still in the process. And I don't think that ever ends. I don't think there's a moment where you're like, I'm free. Like, it's always, the onion is still being peeled,
Right.
you know, until you're no longer on this planet.
Well, we're all ever growing.
Yeah. So I'm just being as transparent as I can in order to heal as much of myself as I can while I'm still on this planet.
Well, you left Milwaukee, you came to New York, you got to Rehoboth, you had a new kind of church experience, and you walked away from that. And I just did a quick look at your bio, and it was just like, you have been musically attached to some amazing productions. The B-Boy Blues. I mean, how'd you get involved in that kind of Black queer theater space? And yeah, and how does that inform what you're doing now? Because out of that, obviously, you met other people. Remember last week when you did your, or 2 weeks ago when you did the live with, oh my goodness, Dr. John
Martin Green?
Yes, John Martin Green. Yes, you guys were all talking about that. And you also talked about, you know, being cut off from the legacy of our indigenous religions from Africa, where same gender loving people were actually had a role in the church and in spiritual life and stuff. And, you know, to just uncover that, you know, as an adult is pretty remarkable. But I just trying to make sure we let the people know your story, and, you know, how you took these musical gifts from when you were 4 years old and manifested them in a way along your journey. So, I mean, you know, everybody doesn't know about some of these plays that you've done that have won Obie Awards, which is the Off-Broadway Awards for their productions and stuff. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can remember them. So I try to be present, but I hear my grandma's voice telling me to go sit down somewhere. Every time you need to go sit down somewhere, like I constantly hear that.
Well, the Ritual, I know Stanley Bennett Clay from Los Angeles. Ritual absolutely is one of, for people who don't know, B-Boy Blues by James Earl Hardy, a fabulous trilogy of books, Sisters, the musical, Hoodoo Love, The Lost Boys, with Dylan Burnside of Pose, who everyone at this point knows. So many other productions. It's quite a resume.
Yeah, I think it's the networking and the circle that I was introduced to when I moved to New York. I know I lucked out. I know I did. When I was at NYU, I met Marcus Gardley, who was already a name. And he wanted me to work on a project, and I was thrust into the Black Broadway scene.
Right.
You know, Harriet Foy and like Keisha Evans Lewis and Count Stovall and all those, like Andre DeShields I've worked with. Like, I know I lucked out. Like, that's not the norm when you move to a new city. I learned the hard way because I wasn't necessarily prepared to work with all those people. But, you know, you make mistakes and you get embarrassed and you learn. And so when it was time for new productions, there's not a lot of Black music directors and composers that are available. They're all booked. So I was young and available, youngish and available. And so I was called on for all these productions. B-Boy Blues happened because I invited James Earl Hardy as a VIP guest to one of my concerts. And I said, I want to do, whenever this turns into a movie, I want to be the music supervisor or composer or something. I want to be involved. So he said, well, we're doing it as a play and we need music. So if you have some music, like we would love to use it. But I ended up like writing new music for that production and tour, and then running sound. And Stanley was the director of B-Boy Blues, and Stanley said, well, I have a play going up that was a movie. Check out the movie and then come to a rehearsal. And then I wrote music for that. Katori Hall with Hoodoo Love, like that was Marcus introduced me to Katori. It was before she was Katori. She was always Katori, but you know what I mean. And ended up doing the transcriptions, literally sitting in my bedroom with her singing these blues songs to me, and then me transcribing. It's been a crazy, wonderful, blessed, lucky journey. And I'm glad I'm saying this out loud because sometimes I don't realize how much I've done. But yeah, I've been really blessed to be able to touch all these people and see them ascend to where they are now. Like Marcus is writing for The Shy, Katori with Tina and P Valley, and it's amazing that I've been able to be involved in these people's projects.
Well, from your bio, your hero, your musical hero is Quincy Jones, and of course, you and I know that my favorite song from the album is His Father's Son, and I was really glad to hear Dr. John talking about it on the live, but it is kind of a unusual place to position yourself in these days. It's kind of being like, this Quincy-like character or this Oz-like character where you're really pulling all the levers behind this thing, and all these other people out front without knowing, how much wonderfulness is in this name. You're Germono Toussaint for Toussaint, like croissant. I just honor you for your sharing your gifts in whatever way that you can.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. From the very beginning, okay, so here's just my sense of humor, or my cynicism, if you will. I get a lot of music. A lot of music comes across my desk, and typically, I'll do a needle drop. And as I was doing a needle drop, I heard a whole bunch of talking. And I was just like, so what's all this talking about? So I had to stop and listen and pay attention. And I was just like, someone is going to be healed from this music and from this album. And I am so glad that you took the risk and to share your journey. I love the way it is packaged in this, heaven, hell, sacred, profane, brown liquor and blessed oil kind of dichotomy. When in truth, we all know, like, it's like the yin and yang symbol. There's always a little dot of the opposite in, the light in the dark. And, so we're all kind of on this journey of self-discovery and, utilizing our gifts for good and things of that nature. And I just think you've just done a wonderful job. I don't want to gas you up, but it's really great. We do have a little time for some questions. We have Matthew and we have Nigel. If you want to unmute and ask a question, that'd be great. Or if you want to put it in the chat, we can take questions there as well. I said hi to you, Nigel. You didn't say hi back. And then we're going to close out with this wonderful video called Having a Party, that features Michael Michelle Lynch, and who I met through some work with Toussaint, which is the oldest running LGBT theater company in the city of New York. And he's like a fixture as part of their community, but he's like this legendary cabaret performer in New York. And for you to have him as part of this record was kind of like, oh, okay, he's tapping the network.
Yeah, definitely. Michael's a legend.
He's absolutely legendary. And it's nice to have that as part of this body of work. One of the lyrics that obviously everybody will hear is there, we want to party like it's 1979. Why 1979?
That's when I was born.
Oh,
I don't expect people to know that, but you know, that's what we can party like the day, like it was the day I was born.
Gotcha. Like it's the day you were born. Okay.
It's funny.
A whole another twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth be told, I was looking it up because in 1978, the urban the Urban League leader called Black culture would be in 1979 a year of crisis because of all the things the government was doing with welfare reform and voter stuff and what have you. And just Thornell and I were thinking about that. What a perfect title, because the year of crisis is also the year that we're just going to drop everything and say, you know what, forget it. We're going to party like it's 1979, and we're going to give the finger to all those people.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to, like the stuff you did. You're talking about church hopping, which I find extremely fascinating. And then, talking about original Black churches with hoodoo, and then you're working in a production called Hoodoo, and the title of your album is kind of like Thornell says, the yin and yang, but you're also giving the finger at the same time to a culture that despised you, but yet you're still accepting of it. Right. And then putting in your admission. And I think that's, like you said, I find that extremely with a high courage.
Yeah, but also it speaks to the fact that the differences between this yin and yang and heaven and hell are all made up in our
mind.
There is no sacrilegious thing that spirit is not in. If God is in everything, the spirit is in everything. There's no thing that will offend the spirit in you or the spirit around you or the spirit that created you, if you believe that. So like it's speaking to that as well. It's sort of like I can do a song about having sex for the first time and then go right into a worship song. You know what I mean? Like there's no conflict.
Well, sex is spiritual. At least it should be.
And the most spiritually gifted people are highly sexual. That's why bishops keep getting caught.
I'll be right there, honey. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, this is why, in Indian culture, there's tantric that intertwines it with the religion in itself. And frankly, without sex, there wouldn't be procreation, so to speak, and it's all intertwined.
Yeah, I remember watching a ceremony of this couple in Africa they were consummating their union, and a priest was there waving something and saying whatever words he was saying, because there was nothing sinful about this.
Right.
It was all beautiful and spiritual. It was part of the ceremony.
Right. Absolutely. So, I mean, I put the mic out for Nigel, Matthew, Boldera, Durek, whoever, wants to ask Germono a question before we show this video. I actually want to know a little bit about the production, but the video is so much fun. I just kind of want to close out with that. Anybody have any questions? Just either unmute your mic or put it in the chat while I cue up this video. No questions? You must have answered all the questions, Germono.
I'm not to talk too much.
No, actually, that's good. That means that you satisfy people's curiosity.
There is a question from Matt.
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, what is your zodiac sign?
I am so that's also interesting. I'm on the tail end of Sag and the beginning of Cap. So I'm the 21st, so I'm Sagittarius, but like right on the cusp.
Capricorn. So you have an intense inner twirl.
I think I know
Whirls.
everything. I think I know everything, but I still get stuff done.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't actually know. I just know I'm sad. Sad. Mostly.
So
Thank you.
Matthew had a question. He said, what was Germono's favorite part of writing Sonny's song?
Oh, so that's a play about my uncle who was in the music industry in the mid 70s. My favorite part was talking to him and getting stories that I'd never heard. Like he was a character, like a lot of those, like, you know, James Brown and David Ruffin and, you know, like all of those types of guys who had like that ego, but then had the demons at the same time.
Right.
My mom always said, and I put this line in the play, the more talent you have, the more demons.
Mm.
And I think, I don't know who she was referring to, but that's definitely him. And I had to get permission to tell this story because I'm showing those demons in the play. But I think just hearing stories. I love hearing stories. I'm writing more about my family that I need to get permission for.
Maybe that's why I'm on my 5th wife already.
Oh my God. You are uber talented. You have so much talent.
Okay, that is funny. So, you know what? I mean, we're in the streaming age, but somebody, Ben Boldero was asking, is there a physical album and where can you buy it?
There's not a physical album because a lot of people don't have physical CD players anymore. You know, this would have been perfect to have an actual vinyl, but you know, there's extra money.
Well,
this was no, sorry, go on.
What I was going to say is actually, you wouldn't be able to make a vinyl right now. Just so everybody knows, that's pretty much all backed up until 2022.
Wow,
because of the pandemic. Because there's only one or two shops left that print vinyl. So there's a huge backup on getting records right now.
Unless you go overseas.
No, those are overseas.
Those are overseas too?
Yeah, China and Czechoslovakia are the two countries that make vinyl, and they're completely backed up.
That's incredible.
I know that.
So Matthew asked, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self right now before moving to New York, knowing what you know now?
Save up some more money.
That part.
Save up at least 5 times as much as you've saved up.
Mm-hmm.
I would say go out and explore. Have fun. I think I was still a little not sheltered isn't the right word. I didn't experience the city the way I should have. I went right into school and work and shows and everything, and that's great. But I didn't like have as much free clubbing, you know, like, I mean, I had some when I was little, but that's not the same as like being able to go as an adult to a club and go out, you know. I think I would have definitely done that more. I think I would have had more of a philosophy of just experiencing life rather than focusing on like one mission. And I think I'm aligned with my mission, but there's freedom in just experiencing things. Like this album is something I knew I had to do. And I have goals for the album, but it's not my whole life. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Other things I need to experience, other things I need to do in order to be a well-rounded person.
I love it. I think that's great. Somebody had a question about hoodoo. You know, obviously, you know, it's a word that's unfamiliar to some people, or a pronunciation that's unfamiliar to some people.
I mean, it's pretty much the equivalent of voodoo, but from was it Northern Africa, or that was brought to the Deep South?
Yeah, Western Africa. So
Western Africa.
It's like a combination of Christianity and voodoo, or voodoo in West Africa, where a lot of the orishas, you know, we had to hide what we were doing, so we named them after saints.
Right.
And a lot of our practices were created using what we had. So like root work, or what somebody else will call spell work, was using like candles and bottles and jars and twine and what was available, you know. But it's still very powerful. Like a lot of our ancestors, grandmothers, grandfathers, great grandmothers, had practices that were rooted in that without us knowing that was practiced.
Yes,
So
it's true.
would they ever have practices of what they would in the daytime go to the church, but at nighttime practice hoodoo at the same time?
I think many of them did.
Yeah.
And some of them, you know, the people would come to them for prayer.
Mhm.
It was actually, yeah, exactly. And I joke with my mom about this because if I have a problem, probably shouldn't say this.
Don't say it.
If I have a problem with someone, she'll say like, "Oh, what is their name?" And I'll give her name. She'll write it down. She's like, "Okay, I'm gonna get my girls on and we're gonna go pray." I'm like, "You know this is hoodoo, right?" Like, you know, you're like, I'm picturing you with a little doll, and she just laughs.
Yeah, dolls and chickens running around, and yeah, it's a whole.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't practice, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just in a different vein now.
Okay, so help me tee up this video that you did in Harlem, celebrating 1979, the year of your birth. Tell us a little bit about having a party featuring Michael Michelle Lynch. Thank you guys, everybody, for coming. This is our swan song, and definitely go check out on Spotify, Apple Music, or your favorite streaming service, Brown Liquor and Blessed Oil. Learn a little bit more about Germono's journey, and experience some really great R&B music. So just a little bit about the video before I let it rip.
Yeah. So this was filmed in Harlem in a brownstone. One of my friends has this amazing brownstone in Harlem. It features Michael Michelle Lynch, who is legendary in the Black queer community, or SGL community. And it's a bunch of my friends just like partying, and it came out July 4th, right in time for Pride in New York City. So it's a bunch of my queer trans friends of color, and just having a party. It's just a good feel-good video.
All right, and with that, thank you, Germono, for joining us today on Impact Music, Media, and Culture. You are definitely having an impact on all three, and tonight we're having a party.
Thank you.
Girl, give me a bourbon and ginger ale, honey. Okay. Got any of that Swiss out? No. Give me some bourbon in this. You got more ginger ale? Can you dig this? Everybody's frozen, looking clean. Don't be holding up the wall. Jump right on in, you'll have a ball. What kind of night will it be? For another drink and we'll see. Buckle up, it's gonna be a ride. Get you on the flip side. Having a party. Like it's 1979. We're gonna party like it's 1979. Party. In the corner getting down, Jim Beam bottle on the ground. Light me up, I'ma take a drag. See how long this I can last. Get on up, get down tonight. By 1 a.m. you be feeling right. No complaints and no regrets. A night you won't forget. Having a party. So good. So good. I'm staying home. All I look sitting at home alone. good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. We're gonna have a good show tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. Know how to party. Have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. We're gonna party like it's 1979.
Germono, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody, for attending our first Impact for 2021. Please check out our Facebook page, The Ovation Agency, for more impacts with more interesting guests. Thank you, Germono. Good night.